Hi, this is Hannah Aldridge with John Broughton on Retrospectives on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
Let's just tell us about you growing up in Muscle Shoals. What are your standout memories of your Muscle Shoals childhood? They say there's something in the water over there that seems to inspire musical magic.
Yeah, it was for me, it wasn't anything super remarkable at the time. I didn't think of it as being like, oh, this is so cool. I'm growing up in Muscle Shoals. It was just where I lived, and it was a little hometown. And I didn't really like at all understand the gravity of what had happened in that city or like the musical history there or the things that were happening, even that I was living. And until I got a little older, I didn't really like see that as anything different than most other people's childhoods. Obviously looking back on it, it was pretty interesting way to grow up. But also I moved from Muscle Shoals to Nashville. So everybody here, their parents are in the music industry too. So it still was kind of like, normal to me, I guess. And really until I like went out and started touring, that's when I realized like this is not really a normal thing that people grow up in the music industry. It had always kind of seemed fairly normal to me outside of that because it was all I had ever known.
You
So Muscle Shoals is a little tiny town. It's not, you would, if you blink when you drive through it, you would miss it.
miss it,
It's
yeah.
not, you would never think, growing up as a kid there are so many people there that have no idea that anything's ever been recorded there. It's not like Memphis where everybody's like, this is what we're known for. Like
Mm.
people just really I mean, they didn't really even know, and still maybe to some extent don't really even know what all has been done in Muscle Shoals, and the musical history that's there. So I think it's a very unassuming little town.
Yeah. You did
So.
spend some time hanging out with your dad at the Fame Studios. Any standout memories of that?
Sure. No, I mean, actually, the the most interesting memory I have of that is actually just recording there myself as a little kid. I remember my dad would like make us go in and record a family Christmas song every year. And those are the most hilarious and precious, recordings I have that no one will ever hear. But of me, like through the years, playing Christmas songs, and I'm so glad he made us do that because it really, it's fun to listen back to listen to those songs. But we would record them at Fame, and we'd all go in there. And my sister and mom and me, we would all go in, and my sister and I would have this kind of silent, rivalry with each other of who could do it better. And you could tell my face where I had started to listen to like Christina Aguilera and people like that. Like I was saying every single note that you could sing. So yeah, it was just that for me. I remember that part of it very, very clearly. And my sister had a baby, her first baby, about 2 years ago, and we took Lily, my niece, into Fame Studios and took her and set her kind of on the couch there in Fame and took a picture. And I thought, this is really strange to like see this many generations of kids kind of grow up in this studio in this family, and it feels like home for me there. I mean, it's for me, the memories that I have there are not like of anything super remarkable because it all just seemed normal,
Mm.
all the famous people and all the recordings I watched and all that. Like, it wasn't like I was like, man, I remember watching this really famous song, be recorded. It was just like another, like going to your dad's office anywhere, and
Yeah,
those were my dad's friends. So it wasn't, the memories I have though, the most special to me are the ones that are with my family there, and Rick Hall, who was like my grandfather, I mean, those are the things that I really remember are like the friends and family that we had there at Fame.
for
So.
sure. Now, you were classically trained on piano to begin with. What did you take out of that classical training that is still helping you today in your music?
Oh gosh. I mean, that was my first introduction really into music. I mean, had I not been in classical piano lessons, I would have known nothing about music at all because I think a lot of people think that like I just came out of the womb with my dad teaching me to play guitar or something, but truthfully, like that was never an interaction that we had of him sitting and teaching me to play instruments or anything. I was far too intimidated of him to let him teach me anything. So I was very shy about him or my mom really doing much with me with music. So sending me to a teacher, it really helped me, helped me learn the basics of music. I mean, I got a thorough education in music and what that means in musicality. And I don't really know what it would have been like had I not learned any of that, from the get-go. But I know it really helped me when I picked up the guitar to learn to play by ear. I never really did any formal training on guitar, so I just play by ear, and that's probably primarily because I was trained on another instrument, and I know how to, talk music with people because I know about that music theory, and I know about what all of the notations mean and how to read music, and all those things that would be really stunting to me as a musician if I didn't know those things.
Was there a particular moment in time you can pinpoint when you'd made that decision to go into a career in music? Were there ever going to be any other career options for you?
No, I don't know that I ever made a conscious decision that this was going to be my career, but I think at some point I just realized that there was no going back. I had built my whole life around it, and for me, I can't really imagine my life any other way. It would be I think there are a lot of musicians that feel that way about music. I think being a touring musician, specifically a touring musician, is very hard to execute long term because what it means is that you have to give up everything else. And I don't think people understand that going into it, that you have to be willing to literally take up the cross and follow the calling. Like you have to be so dedicated to that thing, to being a touring musician, because it seems fun from afar looking at people doing that thing. Wow, you get to go to Australia and then next week you're in California and then you're in Sweden, and it is cool and I love it. It. But if you don't love all of the things that come along with that, you're going to hate it. You're going to hate every second of it. And I think for me, I mean, in general, the moment that I think I decided I wanted to do music in general was probably the very first time I ever got a check in the mail from music. It was very much beginner's luck, but I got maybe some validation and confirmation that I wasn't crazy, that I thought, I think I can sing, I think my songs are okay. And at that point, I thought, okay, I think I can actually make a go at this. I didn't really know what that meant at that point. I mean, it was so early on. It was before I ever even had a record out, and I got a placement in a TV show. And I think at that point, I signed to a publishing deal for a little while, and I did that. And I knew, like, I love writing songs, but I don't think I'm very good at writing them for other people. So from that point started to kind of craft, what do I like about music and what is specific to me that I really enjoy. And I'll be honest with you, there are very few people that I know that are my age that still want to be touring musicians. I mean, it's not unless you have made it to a really high level of success where you're making a lot of money, it is not something that people really want to commit to forever, because it is very hard to maintain a family. It's very hard to maintain friendships. It's very hard to maintain a house or, having a pet. I have a dog. Like, even that is very complicated. I think it's just, it becomes very unglamorous for people when they realize that is your life, and if you don't like traveling, there's no reason to do it, because that's what you're going to be doing forever. And if you don't like being on the stage and playing for people, don't bother, So I don't know at what point I don't know that I ever made a conscious decision. I think I just knew that I couldn't be happy doing anything else. And I still really believe that in the moment that I can be happy doing something else, I'll do that, because this is not necessarily a financially viable career or a career that's super easy on a daily basis, but it's what it's who I am. I just can't imagine doing anything else. So I guess that's a very long answer for a short question, but I don't know that you make a decision. I think it chooses you,
Yeah.
and really did for me. I think it really just handpicked me and said, you're going to be a touring artist, because that's, the only thing I can imagine doing. So, yeah.
Mm. Through the years, did it become easier balancing the life of a parent and your life in music?
No. I mean, I feel like sometimes it feels like it's getting easier, and then, with every step of the way you have different things, but it all comes back to the same feeling of like feeling like you are not doing enough in one side or the other all the time. So it's
Mm.
always very hard to get that like work-life balance, because either you're giving too much time to music and you're gone too much, and everyone's like, oh, well, they're never there, so we'll just not ever count on them for anything or whatever. We'll not invite them to do anything because she's never there, or you feel like you're missing all of your kids' football games or whatever. I'm constantly really carefully and diligently looking at my schedule and saying,
Yeah.
okay, how can I make this work and that work and that work and that work? I think when he was little, like really little, obviously that part of it was much harder. I mean, I had a lot more guilt about leaving a really small child, um, than I do a teenager, because, it's just a different thing. But still, I mean, outside of having a child and leaving a child, while you go on tour, you have family and friends and your house and everything else that you feel a little tinge of guilt about, so I don't know that it ever completely gets easier. I think the logistics of it have gotten easier maybe, but I think I will always kind of have that, like, constantly trying to figure out how to juggle it all, because it's
Yeah,
hard to do.
for
It's
sure.
hard.
How do you look back on your very early songwriting efforts now when you were just starting to hone your skills as a songwriter?
Um, just like how I look back on the songs, or my
Yeah, yeah,
skills.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think out of the gate I probably wrote better songs than most people do, because I didn't start when I was 10. Like, I think most people, when they start writing songs, they don't have anything to write about. I had already, when I started writing songs, because I started really kind of late in life. I started in my early 20s, and at that point I already had a child, and I had already gotten divorced from someone. And so I had things to write about. So I
Mm.
think my early songs are not, I still play them. Like Lonesome is one of my very first songs I ever wrote. They're not my favorite songs, some of them. They're not even what I do now. Like, if you listen to even Razor Wire up against my new record, it's very different music,
Mm.
because I've really fine-tuned what I enjoy about songwriting and what I want to talk about and what makes me different from other songwriters. But I look back on them and try to be as much of a neutral audience member as possible, because I don't think that they're awesome songs, but I also know when I look back at what I do now, I'm going to think they're not awesome songs. I think that's I mean, if you don't feel like you're getting better at all times, then what are you doing? But I also think that I envy that person that wrote that first record of mine, because I don't think I could write those songs ever again. I was in such a low point in my life. I don't think I could tap into that again.
Mm.
I think you really only write those songs a couple times, those really deeply, like, the person that ripped your heart out. I think you can only write them a song once or twice in your life, and then you're
Yeah.
done. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
I feel like those songs all went on Razor Wire, and now if I wrote them, maybe I could have fine-tuned them a little bit more, but I don't know that I could ever write those songs again. I kind of envied that place where those came from a little bit. I wouldn't want to go back to those days, but I wish that I could tap into that level of rawness and being sort of a blank canvas. Now I go, oh, I've already written that song, or, oh, it doesn't fit into this, or whatever. So or how am I going to murder someone in this one? So I think it, for me, like that whole beginning stages of my writing, I don't think I hate those songs as much as most people hate their first songs, but I also don't know that I think I've gotten better since then. I hope,
Mm.
at least. So
Was there any point in those early days that you would maybe take a song to your dad for assessment?
Never. I would never
Never.
even do that now. I wouldn't want to hear what he would have to say. I wouldn't want to hear what anybody has to say now, to be honest. I mean, I try to take any sort of praise or criticism with a complete grain of salt because, not to sound cynical, but I don't really know that it matters if anybody thinks that my songs are good or bad. I have kind of a whole idea, I guess, in my head of how the music industry works, and that it's very business oriented, and that the song really is not as important as a lot of the other things. So I try to focus a lot of my time on creating the song that I want to create, and then I've created it, and then that's what it is. And past that, whether people like it or don't like it, I mean, I had that conversation with someone today that, I just said, this particular person in Nashville that's kind of a hot shot, I said, I don't really know if that person likes my music, but I don't actually care. Like, it's not of any concern to me whether that person likes my music, because they don't have to. I'm not here to make everybody like my music. I'm also not under any assumption that, people will like my music. I mean, if my dad probably hates my music. I have no idea, I mean, rightfully so. Everybody has the right to not like music. I think that's so strange that people kind of get in this mindset of like, oh, you don't like my music? Well, you must not love me, or you don't like me. And I don't think that that's the case. I think you cannot like something that someone's doing creatively, but not have any sort of feeling about them as a person, So I try to really separate that out because I have so many friends that are musicians. I try to really separate out the music thing from them as a person. And obviously, a lot of times, if you really love somebody, you end up liking their music anyways.
Yeah.
But I guess he would probably have a lot of things to say, because he, for me, is like such an incredible songwriter. I've written songs with him before, and I'm just like, how do you come up with that? Like, where did that come from in your brain? I don't know. I could never find those words and imagery, but I just think, I really respect him a lot as a songwriter, and I would never expect him to feel the same about me because I just think he's brilliant as a songwriter, outside of being my dad,
Yeah.
So.
I get the feeling you're pretty much a project-to-project songwriter. You're writing for the next specific album project. Do you have a stockpile of songs that maybe do sit with you for a while, or you pretty much project to project?
Yeah, I do. I am very like writing clusters kind of person, and I have found I do really have like projects that I write for, and for example, my new one that I worked on all through COVID. I was in a place that I didn't feel like I had anything to write about myself. So for that particular project, I wrote almost all story songs because I didn't feel like I had anything to say. Like, I was like, I don't even know what to say. I have nothing important to say right now. So there's one song on that record that's really about COVID, but even that is very vaguely about that, So for me, I was in a place at that point where I really was enjoying writing other people's stories. But now, I'm even though I've not even put that record out, I'm starting to kind of marinate and think about like, what would the theme and the subject matter be of a new record, as opposed to a lot of writers that just write songs all the time and then they bunch them together. These are the best songs. I feel like I really have to have some sort of like, this is what I'm doing. This is the goal for this, to have a vision of what I want a project to sound like. And I think that I kind of reinvent myself a little bit on each record that I do. I because of that, I sort of become some sort of different thing every time. And I'm usually equally as into it, but I'm really into, at the moment, what I'm doing now, which is very cinematic and kind of really leaning into the dark underbelly stories, Gothic America kind of stuff. And that's been I really have gotten into that sort of thing, so I'm sure I'll move forward from that at some point, decide to do something else. But I at the moment, that's the project like mindset that I had with the new record. So yeah. I don't sit around and all write about that.
Going through your catalog today, I think you're going to be one of those artists that's never going to release the same album twice or two similar sounding albums.
maybe not. But you know what's interesting about that, actually? Probably like if you listen to my live show of me just playing acoustic, those songs wouldn't sound too dissimilar because at the end of the day, they're all written in my room with me with my guitar or a piano, you know? So at the beginning of all of those songs, they all sound pretty similar, you know? It's usually the producer that ends up, I give them a lot of control to have this like vision. And with this one with Lachlan, he and I both really had a vision for it, but he really, I mean, a lot of that's in there is him, you know? Those songs are songs that I wrote or that even we wrote together, and they could all kind of sound like an acoustic record if I did that, and they can all also kind of match up with my stuff off of Gold Rush and to some extent off the stuff of Razor Wire. But when you start looking at the production on all of them, they're quite different productions. So I think a lot of that is that, but this one is definitely a lot more like, I think it is the first time that I've ever written a record with a very specific aesthetic sound and everything right out of the gate. You know, I knew exactly, you know, the look and vibe and feel of what we wanted everything to look like even before we had finished the whole record, because we knew we wanted it to be about those stories and those kind of dark noir Hollywood kind of things. So this project is much more that way than any of the other ones. Usually I just finish the record and then kind of figure all the other stuff out on the back end of it. So I don't know that I probably wouldn't release another record that was Hollywood noir, but I do think a lot of it depends on, I've never worked with the same group of people twice. So maybe something would sound similar if I did that. I don't really know. It's possible. But Lachlan also doesn't release much of anything that sounds the same either. I mean, I think he's got kind of, I think a lot of the producers I've worked with, they've been artists themselves. I mean, there was Jordan Dean and Jason, Charles Miller, and Lachlan all just in a row that are all artists themselves that I've brought in to produce my record because I like their music, you know. So I think they bring a little bit of their music into the record. So I would be interested to test that theory out. If I would do the same record twice, if I got somebody to do the record again, we could try it out.
Yeah. There's a real raw emotional element to your songs and some very personal. Have you at times felt a little tentative about putting so much of yourself out there?
Yeah, I do. I think I feel even more that way when I play live, because when I'm playing live, I tend to really talk more about why I wrote a song or what it was about, and particularly like personal family stuff or the religious upbringing part. I don't ever want to be offensive to people, you know. I always feel a little apprehensive if I'm releasing or saying something that could be offensive. I guess I have to keep in mind that some of my audience are very conservative Southern religious people, because those are the people that I grew up around. And so there is a portion of the people that are listening to my music that are those people that I wrote the songs about. So that's hard to separate from sometimes, that whole thing of like, oh God, my parents are going to hear this, you know. But like other people that I don't know, I don't care what they think about any of my songs, you know. I mean, I don't feel like I write those songs necessarily for anyone specific. So I guess if you don't like it, then you don't have to listen to it. I feel kind of that way about it. And if you get too caught up in trying to worry about putting too much of yourself out there, I think you really stunt yourself as a writer. I mean, I don't know what you put out there if you don't put yourself out there, you know. I mean, it's that you end up just being everybody else. So for me, finding my story and my voice in the music industry, what can I bring to the table? What do I have to say that anybody cares about? If I don't do that, then why in the world would anybody listen to my record? Because they can go listen to somebody else's record that is saying something important. So I really feel that that's important, but I do get nervous. I've got a song on my new record called Unbeliever that's all about me leaving the church, and I get a little nervous whenever I play that in front of people that I think I might be offending, because sometimes they come up to me and they want to talk to me afterwards or whatever. send me emails about it, you know, and you're like, oh, but yeah, I mean, that's a part of it, I guess.
Yeah.
That's just part of it. So
I've often seen reviews and descriptions of your work as having that dark element, and even on your website, you're referred to as the independent dark country singer-songwriter. So I gather you're pretty comfortable with that tag yourself, even though you seem like a bright and cheery person.
yeah, oh gosh, that's hilarious. I'm not a bright and cheery person. My house looks bright and cheery. Maybe that's what is confusing you. No, I don't hold on a second. I think we've lost video here. Whoop, there we go. I don't necessarily think of myself as a bright and cheery person, although I do lean like into the kind of dark noir stuff because I think it's interesting, and I think that for me, I grew up very fundamentalist Christian, and so I've always been kind of interested in that aesthetic and drawn to that sort of dark side of things. I love horror movies. I love, gothic novels. And so it's something I'm interested in. I just like it. I'm one of those weird people that just really enjoys the idea of vampires and things like that. But I also like that I can weave it into my story and make it make sense. And so I mean, that gothic noir, yeah, I mean, I would much rather that be the imagery that people have of me than it just be Americana, because that doesn't really tell anybody anything, So if you say, oh yeah, Hannah Aldridge, she's this Americana artist, that no one has a drive to go and listen to what my music is, because that could literally be anything, But if you say she's Gothic Americana or she's noir country, they go, oh, okay, that sounds like something I'd like, and it makes them want to go listen, because I think it's a little bit more specific. So, and it's not all noir, I mean, some of it, I would say there aren't any happy songs per se in any of my sets, but not all of them are all like demons and ghosts and stuff, but yeah, I guess if I ever lean away from that, it would be hard to figure out how to weave that kind of stuff back into my set, but or my albums, but I do think that it is true to who I am. So I'm not bothered by people pointing that out, I'm not a happy, cheery person, but I also I'm not constantly walking around like, in a cape or anything, so I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I think it's a little bit cultivated, but also not. I mean, there's some part of me that's really true about, so.
I really love that you went with a stripped back live album with your third release, and many would consider that a brave move in such an early stage of your career. So was there a specific motivation for you in doing that?
Yeah, actually, that was the last record I was ever going to release at that point.
Oh, really?
I was at that stage in my life that I was like, I'm done with music. And so I thought, well, I'll do one last record. I'm going to do a live record because there's a couple songs I've never recorded. And I just felt so burnt out and exhausted, I think. And I just decided I was going to. Also, the other reason I wanted to do it was because it was a little bit of a, I guess I was feeling very frustrated with the fact that there were a lot of sort of gatekeepers in the music industry that would not allow you to play with certain artists, even if they're your friend, or like do certain things, because that label doesn't work with that label or whatever. And I really wanted to do something that had nothing to do with anybody but just me and the people whoever I could get that was available to come and play music, and us just make it all about music and all about the fans. And I felt really annoyed at the music industry at that exact current moment, and the whole process of putting a record out and how all that works, and having to find a label to put it out and having to find all these agents to do stuff. And I wanted to do something that just really felt like it was about music and less about any of the other stuff. And so I did it in that way. And I really thought in that moment that it would be my last record that I ever did. And then COVID happened. And so I ended up releasing that record on Icons, and Icons is a label that I signed with, right at that moment, you know, when I was feeling like I don't want anything to do with this Nashville music business stuff anymore. And I found just like dropped like manna out of the sky for me, you know, this label that was perfect. Like they were exactly what I needed in that moment to be like, yeah, we love what you're doing. We want to lean into that sort of dark noir thing and let you do you. And you don't have to worry about, we don't even know what Americana is. What is that? You know? So it was like this thing. I was like, this is amazing. This is exactly what I needed. I needed someone that was not related at all to Nashville, didn't know who any of the people were that I was working with, you know, any of that stuff. So I thought, well, I'll release this record with them. And then they said, well, do you want to release something else? And this was in the middle of COVID. And I thought, well, yeah, I guess I'll release this other little like 2-song EP that I did with my friend Jason right at the beginning of COVID too. So in that time of having the support through Icons and lots of other team members and people, and just having the freedom and time to find the right people to work with that were really supportive of me the way I am, and not trying to like force me to be something else or participate in things I didn't want to participate in or whatever. I had a lot of time and space to really regroup and have a different outlook on the music industry. And I'm in such a better place, and it has really, really helped me musically, because I felt like I was never going to be able to write a song again, because I just felt so defeated and really, really like I was not getting anywhere, and it was all my own work was the only thing that was ever really getting me anywhere, you know, and nobody would pay attention to what I was doing. And so I needed that time. And I think it really helped me really hone in on what I wanted to do as an artist, and help me put out a couple projects that were really true to me, you know. And I love the new stuff that I've done. I really do. And I look back on that moment, kind of laugh about that and say, oh, it's the last record I was going to ever do, because I really thought that in that moment. I really thought that was the last record I would ever do, you know? And yeah, so I think that's why I did it, was because I wasn't I wasn't planning on it just being my third record. So.
Wow. So if you hadn't gone through that experience, we may not now be looking at album number 4.
You would definitely not be looking at album number 4, and if you did, it would look very different. I mean, I would have never given myself that kind of space and patience to develop and grow, and have the time to really hone in and think about what I wanted, and how I wanted to present myself, and whether it mattered to me if people liked it or not. You know, I didn't really know that there was a group of people out there that were all on the same page of wanting to do the same stuff that I was doing. And I think it really took finding that group of people to, again, validate me and say, this is cool. Like, keep doing that. You don't have to do this. We don't even care about that. Do this thing that you're doing, you know? And I needed that, to know that there were people out there that would let me do that and help me do that, you know? So that was really, it was amazing. And Lachlan was a huge part of that for me too, of just helping me keep pushing and keep writing, and let's put out something, you know. And that really was, it was really important, I think. And I think it will be important looking back in 10 years, that moment in my life that all COVID and all of that happened, and I had that time to really focus. So.
And as a songwriter and as an artist, it must have been really encouraging to have your songs accepted and well received in that stripped back format, because it really enables the song to stand and fall on its own merits.
Yeah, it did. It certainly was. It's been really great for me to do that. But I also, another reason why I wanted to do a live record as well was that I have a lot of tours that I play with a band, and all of my albums are with a band, but I find that people really love that sort of, this is how I wrote the song thing, you know, and they like that about my shows, that they can come in and hear a story about a song. And I felt like sometimes whenever I would play shows, that people would come to buy something and they want it to sound like what they just heard, if they heard a solo show. And I'd be like, well, these are all rock albums. I want to hear something like what I just heard, you know? So that was another thing for me too. I wasn't necessarily thinking that big a picture at the moment, but for me, I know that people really like to hear those songs the way that they are. And I think there are some people that are purists that really feel like the rest of it's just a bunch of noise and they just want to hear the story in the song, you know. And I have always liked having those two separate things. And so doing those songs acoustic, I think is good to be able to sort of let people hear them how they're written, because at the end of the day, it is about the song. You know, it is all about the song. It is, if you don't have a good song, then none of this other stuff matters. Even though I said earlier that stuff tends to be more important, I find that very annoying that that's more important. You know, I think the aesthetic and all that is really important, but why bother having any of that other stuff if you don't have a song that's worth listening to? I think you really have to have two together. And so having those songs that are worth listening to is not enough usually either, sadly. So then you have to worry about the other stuff as well. But being able to just bring it back to the fact that I'm capable of singing these songs without band members behind me, you know, I think that that's a really important part of what I do, and people hearing the songs for what they are, flaws and all, you know.
For sure.
So
yeah, let's talk about this upcoming record, our first single to be released, I think around the time of your trip to Australia, around the time that this will go to air. I believe it was a COVID project.
Yeah, it was a COVID project. I actually, we released one single already, but the second single is coming out April 14th. And that song is interesting because it's actually one of Lachlan's songs, but we rewrote it. So, so Lachlan and I, when we started this project, it was a bit of a project where we sort of, you know, knew that we wanted to do something that was not any pressure on writing some huge storyline. We didn't really want, we didn't want to have something that felt like we needed to have a record done, if that makes sense. You know, we thought we'll write a couple songs, we'll kind of see how that goes. We'll, you know, see if we can find something that sounds cool and maybe release a single or two. And then it kind of snowballed into a record. And a lot of that came from us just really leaning into enjoying the production on it. Like, we really loved every song that we would write. We're like, oh man, it'd be so cool if we had these strings or this or that. And I think pretty quickly we realized, like, this is a cool concept for a full record, you know? So we kind of leaned into doing a full record at that point, and you know, making it an entire project. And it was funny, it kind of started as like a single or two. Then we were like, well, let's do it as an EP. And then from there it grew into, well, let's do it as a record. By the end of it, we were like, maybe we should do a 2-part record. So maybe there will be a second part to it. We don't know. But it was just really fun. I think both of us felt like it was a project that we could be as weird. And I've never used a theremin on a record before. I've never used, you know, strings. I've never used any of those things that we got to just be super indulgent with, honestly. Like, we were just obnoxious about it. We were like, what if we do this here, you know? We're like, yeah, let's do it, you know? I mean, and that for me was kind of the fun in that record, was that we could be as weird and creative as possible, because at that point there was nobody to tell us no. It's like, this is too much. But I will say, it's the most difficult record I've ever done, because we didn't see each other at all during the whole process. Damien, the other guy who produced it, I've still not seen him the entire time. The guy who mixed it, I've never met, ever.
Wow.
And, you know, a lot of the players I've never met. You know, the guy that played bass on the record, he was in Sweden. So none of us sat in a room together for this project. And I do not recommend that to anybody out there that's listening. It is the hardest way you could ever do a record. I'll never do it that way again. But in that way, I mean, this record, because of the circumstances, because we were so far away, and because we felt like we had nothing to lose, I think we did a record that we could never have done under any circumstance. You know, it was like, you know, if we never put this out, it's fine, you know, because it's not costing us a bunch of money. We're all recording this in our bedroom and we have nothing else to do. And so, yeah, it ended up being something that was just so unique to that exact scenario that we were able to do it. I'm sure it would be quite different if we all sat in a studio together and said, let's make a record, but the first, or the second single rather, Portrait of the Artist as a Middle-Aged Man, is one that Lachlan actually wrote with Damien. And I told Lachlan when we were getting ready to finish up the album, I said, I really think we need to do one of your songs on this record. I think it would be super cool. So he said, well, I mean, yeah, I'd be open to thinking about it. So I came back to him and said, I'd like to do this song. And he was like, oh man, I don't know. That one's kind of a weird one to do. And I said, well, hey, what if I rewrite it a little bit, So, okay. So I sent it back to him. He was like, oh, this is very cool, because I reset the whole thing in LA. So instead of it being from Sydney, this guy that's going through a midlife crisis and he's, may or may not have murdered someone. I took that story and made it this Bonnie and Clyde kind of story set in LA, and just changed a little bit of it, but the delivery of it too changed that quite a lot. And it became this sort of swanky kind of, just groovy song. And I thought, man, this song is the coolest song on the record now, So I'm really glad that we did that, because I ended up absolutely loving that. But I think Lachlan had a blast revisiting his song too, because it's something he's played for years and years and years, and we just redid it, completely. So it was fun. And then, we did Psycho Killer. That's on the record as well.
Oh,
so,
wow.
so it was fun. We indulged quite a lot on it. So.
And I suppose you could say that in a weird kind of a way, that being in lockdown was almost a blessing in disguise. It gave you that time to be a little more self-indulgent, as you said.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess everybody now can look back on it and find some sort of silver lining in it. I mean, it felt like the worst couple years of my life when I was going through it. I mean, it was really specifically hard for me, like it was for everyone. It was hard in different ways for me, but there were a lot of really amazingly positive things that came out of that for me, a lot. And they keep revealing themselves, really. But the time home with my son was really great and really needed at that current point in both of our lives. And I, during that time, was able to rest my voice, because I had really severe vocal nodes, and I was at the point that I was going to have surgery anyways. And that time at home healed those. So I don't have that problem currently right now, and I'm able to sing again, which I didn't actually know if that would ever happen again. I was really not, if you listen to my 7-inch, my voice sounds completely different on that 7-inch than it does now, because I had no range at all in my voice on that, on syncing and Some Ghosts Don't Make a Sound, that 7-inch I put out during COVID, because that was recorded right on the front end. So you can literally do a comparison of what my voice sounds like then and now. And then also, like I said, just the space and time to kind of regroup and get my head around the music industry and be in a little bit of a better place emotionally about, all of the things that go along being in the music industry. That was really important to me. And then, all those things led into me having the ability to be able to write this record, and the creativity and the support of knowing, what I wanted it to sound like and look like,
So the format of the upcoming shows down here will be very heavy emphasis on the new album?
Very much so, yeah. Actually, I had the luxury of having Lachlan on tour with me this past summer in Europe, and we played some of those songs live, kind of started trying to figure out how to do them. So it should be really interesting, because you don't really hone in on how to play songs until you've done it a whole lot. So the first inversions of them are always really interesting to see. So I am not entirely sure how these songs are going to sound live yet, because I haven't sat in the room with any people during the whole time. But I'm playing with some amazing players, and Lachlan and I have toured a lot together. So I know it's going to be great, but it's going to be very much a lot of new material. And for people in Australia, it'll primarily be all new material, because I haven't been there in years.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of songs that have been written and whatnot since then. So yeah, it'll be a lot of new material, and I'm really, really looking forward to that, because it's like the last place that I haven't toured since COVID. So it'll finally feel like I've got friends there that I haven't seen since before that I'm just like, I cannot believe I'm finally getting to see you. So it just feels amazing to be able to come back and kind of pick up where I left off over there. I'm really, really, really excited about it. Honestly, it doesn't feel real until I get there that I'm actually going to get to go back. So we're really excited.
Always wonderful to have you here. We're very excited that you're going to be road testing new material on us.
Oh yeah, definitely. You'll get to hear all kinds. I don't know what it'll sound like either. It'll be a surprise for all of us. Thank you for chatting with me. I appreciate it. Sorry it's been so chaotic.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much, Hannah. We're looking to have safe travels over here. And we look forward to seeing you next month.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. I'll see you in a couple weeks, hopefully.
Brilliant. Okay.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.